This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
This half hour brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummels Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, best in new inventory, great pre-owned inventory with the Sunbury Motors guarantee. Terrific service department that backs it up every step of the way, from quick lane to inspections to routine to difficult. All at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummels Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Tuesdays never difficult because of the great Neal Coolong. Sir, welcome.
You bet. As always, my pleasure to be here.
Okay, so now it's the Kirk Cousins idea is being floated around Pittsburgh. So, as this saga continues, what is your continuing commentary?
If we're at the point that people really want to consider the idea of getting Kirk Cousins coming off of a miserable season, even half of the price tag that he has, I think we've reached delusion at best. Mason Rudolph would have to be considered at least on the level of Kirk Cousins, and he costs about 1.2% as much. I don't know why they would even entertain this. They did, most likely, let's assume Atlanta's not going to cut him and take a bath on salary cap and cash wasted. They've got him as a reasonable backup now at, granted, the highest salary I think anybody could have as backup player. They're not going to want to cut him. And if that's the case, the Steelers aren't getting him on a new contract unless you were to convince him to sign a new contract. I don't think he really wants to do that. I think he'd rather be released and sign, on his own accord, maybe wait around for an injury or something like that. If he's going to come to Pittsburgh, most likely it would have to come via trade. So now what you're saying is you want to give up assets to acquire maybe the worst quarterback in football last season at a salary that is so far above and beyond what he showed to be last year. That might end up. Let's say they even do it for a conditional 6th-round pick. That might end up being the worst transaction in Steelers history, just simply because Kirk Cousins, if you watched him last year, he is nowhere near where he was in Minnesota, not even close to the same player. There's no doubt in my mind they can find one of 20 different players to give them what Kirk Cousins gave Atlanta last season at obviously a considerably lower price and not have to give up a draft pick to do it. So I think it's insanity to even suggest it. At this point now, if it's not going to be Aaron Rodgers, which of course, we said back in March, but we have no idea. But if anything, he's not really inclined to sign until maybe 72 hours before training camp. So really, if that's their option, I think they're fine with Rudolph. At least he's been there. At least he understands what's going on. And they might be able to get something out of him as opposed to starting over completely with Cousins and what's likely a much larger contract than they would need to spend to get that level of mediocrity from their starting quarterback.
Something that was surprising to everybody last week was when Jim Irsay passed away at 65. And that, we know that, off the field there have been a couple of issues for him, which he's been open and talked about. But I don't think anybody expected him to pass away last week. He's interesting in that he, his dad had so much money that he bought the Colts. Eventually he moves them from Baltimore to Indianapolis. But yet, and this is when, I think he bought the Colts when Jim was 13. And what's interesting is that he didn't, just go into the boardroom. I mean, he worked. In other words, he did menial jobs. I mean, he cleaned up the locker room. He went out and he assisted with the ticket office. He answered phones. He took care of ticket requests. He then moved into the personnel department eventually, worked there for a while. Then he eventually is general manager. That way, when he became an owner, he had a real-world feel of the franchise. And I guess he's done the same thing with his three daughters. They've all had to work their way through. What's your thought on Jim Irsay?
Jim Irsay, the personal struggles that you mentioned, I think probably get more of the headlines. To me, works in the media. I can understand why that is. As you put it, I mean, he was really a throwback owner. He was never going to be able to get out of his dad's shadow, and I think to some degree he probably kind of knew that. The reason I say that is because, unlike any other owner, and the reasons for him doing this is certainly up for debate. The way I like to think of it is, I think he brought more of his true personality into what he was doing for the public to see than other owners would.
Right.
In the NFL, at least. Other sports, maybe it's a little bit different. But in the NFL, it's pretty buttoned up. They're a pretty exclusive group. They don't let people in from the outside very often, but Irsay seemed to embrace who he was and what he was doing. And I think he earned that. Most people, I've had this conversation with a lot of people, most people don't get past, well, it's Daddy's team. He just got it. He probably knew more about the inner operation, the working functionality of his franchise better than any other owner did when they took over. Which is to say, I mean, with all due respect to Art Rooney, I'm not at all castigating him in this, but he didn't start in the locker room.
Right.
That wasn't his pet. Dan didn't even start in the locker room.
Right.
Irsay really was at the bottom, almost in a demeaning way. I think there was an issue with how his dad handled all of it. He wanted him to start at the lowest rung. He wanted him to really feel the lowest rung. He wanted him to know what that was. And he worked his way up to a job that, yeah, let's be honest, he was probably going to get anyway. But
right.
I don't think that was Irsay's opinion of it, going through all of that. And in that, he learned how everything worked. But the thing is, with him, that I found different compared to many of the other owners, his peers, those guys that really kind of took over in the 90s into the 2000s, he had an approach that was less, I've arrived, I've done it, and more like he's always chasing the gold ring, which is to say, I mean, you have to kind of maybe suggest timing, if not luck, might be a little bit involved to be able to land Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck back-to-back the way that he did. But he was able to build structures around both of those quarterbacks that fans can look back on, success or otherwise, and say, this team did everything it could to win championships when they had this window available. And there's a ton of things that are not in Jim Irsay's control. Let's keep in mind, he lost the coach for a year to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, I think is what, I'm forgetting his name, not Caldwell, the old Colts coach who was the Ravens defensive coordinator. Arians took over for him.
Yeah,
but he had to do that. To some degree, you're going to have to manage that as an owner. That's a very difficult situation. Bruce Arians had never been a head coach before.
Right.
Did a great job. Led that team through what they were doing. Brought Andrew Luck a long way. Arians goes out, gets a job, does great as a head coach for the remainder of his career. But that's in line with his own personal struggles, the challenges that they had, the decision that he had to make to cut Peyton Manning where they were at that point. He faced a lot of things. And if you look at it overall, they had pretty continued success for a long time. Before he took over, I remember when I was a kid, Colts were laughing stock. They didn't win anything ever. That was probably the worst-run franchise in all of sports. Irsay took over probably around that time, and yes, again, to get the luck of getting Peyton Manning, but they still developed Marvin Harrison. They had the foresight to see what Edgerrin James could be within their offense. Dwight Freeney was not a top 3 draft pick
No.
He came from nowhere. No one thought that guy was going to be who he was.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Sanders would have been a Hall of Fame level player. They had all kinds of guys that came through, memorable players in the 90s and the 2000s. He's behind that. Owners get grief when the team doesn't win. They will never get credit when they're good. Irsay is the guy driving all of that. And they did it what would have been twice, in my opinion. It would have had sustained success with Andrew Luck. Luck makes a personal decision, a shocking personal decision. And Irsay is behind it. You didn't hear him complain. He never went after Luck personally. And even more than that, he let Luck have 100% of the signing bonus that he gave him. That says something, in my opinion, mark of a man, for him to do that, knowing that he just gutted his franchise completely to the point where they're still kind of struggling to get back to that. To have that and to be able to still find grace within all of the failure that they saw and rebounded from, to me, is pretty remarkable. I think that's probably as good a eulogy as a lot of people will give for Jim Irsay, but I always felt that he didn't get a lot of the credit that he probably deserved for the team's growth and success and how that was handled by the franchise during his tenure.
Yeah, no. I mean, look, when he got there, all right, they bring the Colts in 84? Well, what are the biggest things in Indianapolis? The Pacers, IU basketball, Purdue basketball, the Indianapolis 500. The Colts were an also-ran, okay? And then the biggest move Jim Irsay made was when he hired Bill Polian. The two biggest moves were making sure Peyton Manning got drafted and hiring Bill Polian. Then all of a sudden it's like, hey, the Colts are winning. Now the Colts are like, in that city, the Colts own that city now. I know the Pacers are doing great right now, but the Colts have won Super Bowls. I mean, they've won a Super Bowl. No T.J. Watt, no D.K. Metcalf, no Darius Slay as the Steelers work out. All of them are in contract situations. Your thoughts on that? And by the way, Todd, thanks so much. Chuck Pagano.
Pagano, of course. Yes.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to come to that. I totally blanked on that. That's embarrassing. T.J. Watt, get used to him not going. I don't think people quite understand that. In fairness, my 2 cents, I think it's because T.J. Watt gets a pass on a lot of things when it comes to Pittsburgh. Now, I understand the value that he has. He's clearly an all-time great within the team. No, he will wear number 9 again. I don't care if he wins a Super Bowl or not. Easily one of the 3 best defensive players that the franchise has had. T.J. Watt didn't hold out, which is, to me, this is a game of words more than anything. Last time he was going into the final year of his contract, he didn't hold out, but he went to camp and didn't do anything. So if that to you is really what the defining characteristic is of a player who's dedicated to the team, who's giving his all for everything, because Steelers fans freak out anytime a player, quote-unquote, holds out, which is to say he doesn't go to training camp. Watt went to training camp and didn't do anything the entire time he was there. Until he got his contract, that's when he suited up and got hurt week 2, I think it was. I don't see any reason at all Watt's going to participate in camp again this year. My thing is, I don't care what you call it. If he shows up and he's not practicing because of his contract. And this will be the second time it's done it. And the reason I say it in a futuristic sense is because he has far more reason to do it now than he did before. And the team has way less reason to get into his demand than they did before. I see this being something that's going to come up again here, not at OTAs, but come training camp time. He's not going to be there. I don't think the Steelers are going to give him a $40 million a year extension. And that's what the market says they should give him. They gave him an extension. The Steelers expect their players to play the contract. They don't have these issues very often. Now, if he hasn't gotten one, and they expect him to enter the final year of the season coming off the Defensive Player of the Year award, making $2.5 million, they understand that. But if he's getting paid $29-30 million, which was at the time when he signed it the highest contract on the defensive side of the ball in the game, they're going to expect him to play that. And I don't think that he really want to do that. I don't think he's going to miss games, but but I think he's going to sit for training camp as well. So I think it's something we need to get used to.
Yeah, Watt is going into the final year, the fourth year of a 4-year, $112 million contract. So that's where he is. Myles Garrett, as you and I both know, signed a 4-year, $160 million deal in the offseason when it looked like he was going to be gone. And the thought process is Micah Parsons could top that. So what happens in the NFL is the groundbreaking contract within 2 years becomes obsolete. That's where T.J. Watt is right now.
Yep, and I understand both sides of it. I really do. Because I don't think either side is wrong. I do think it is fair for the Steelers to say, we gave you a ton of money at a point that we didn't have to. We had you under team control. You didn't participate in camp. We wanted to get a deal done. We gave you money then. This time, you're being paid at or around the top of the market. The only reason that changed is because you leapfrogged them a couple years ago. This happened to Garrett before. Garrett got his second contract. We are interested in talking to you about your second contract. We're at this level. I'm not sure if it's at, above, or whatever for what Garrett is doing, but the team can say very easily, let's get through the season. We'll take care of you next offseason. We'll get you new money. That's what you really want. To do it now kind of in the face of the 4-year contract that they signed because they only are getting 3 out of them. And the only reason he wants to change it is because somebody else got paid more. To your point, that happens all the time. Yep. The next quarterback who's established as a starter to get a contract is going to be the highest paid. That's just, in one way or another, the agent's going to find a way to say he's the highest paid player in the game. The Steelers and Watt can go back and forth with how they want to kind of mix the money around or whatever, but you're talking about a player pushing 30 years old at probably the most athletic position in the game. He's played an enormous amount of snaps, and he's given everything for the team. I don't want to underplay that, but from a business perspective, I don't know how smart it is to just give him Garrett's contract. Let's keep in mind everything that Myles Garrett did to get that contract. I wouldn't recommend Watt doing that. I was actually kind of surprised with the Browns' ability to acquiesce to his loudly spoken demands, in my opinion, in some ways, unprofessional demands. Watt is not like that. He's not going to use that. But at the same time, you need to be in camp. You can't kind of sit there and walk around because you're now paying less than Myles Garrett is. And I understand the battle between the two, but at a 10,000 level, they are both first ballot Hall of Fame players. It's only a matter of who gets paid when. Watt will get that type of contract somewhere, whether it's Pittsburgh or elsewhere. He will get that contract leading into free agency or at the start of free agency, if not before that from the Steelers. But he's going to take a position that he needs to get X percent over what Garrett is getting. But the key thing is, and I'm rambling about this, I'm fired up about this topic. The key thing is exactly as you put it. Where is Micah Parsons in all this? Because Parsons is going to get more than Garrett. That's guarantee. Right. So where does Watt fit in with that? That's probably what he's going to end up waiting for. If he wants to be the last one paid, which, they're all the same more or less except to themselves, I'm sure. But you're looking at, 43, 44 a year. I don't the Steelers are going to pay that for Watt. You have to give that to Parsons. Parsons hasn't gotten paid yet. He's going to get that contract. I don't think Watt is going to be much more than symbolically ahead of Garrett, but it's a race between the two. Who's going to be, in this case, the second one to sign.
And by the way, to Watt's credit, he's fought through things, and I know that we've talked about when he's missed time, what it's meant, but he has played now, including the playoff game last year, 44 consecutive games. I don't think people realize that. He played the last 9 games of 2022 and every game in 23 and 24 plus the playoff last year. He's played in 44 straight games. So he has not been the injury-prone problem that some people perceive him to be, because he is not.
No, not at all. I mean, you look at the track record of when in there is really what they're getting paid for. There's a certain level of risk that comes with an extension. I think it's more on, Watt being the first Steeler to get his first non-quarterback, and I think it was the non-quarterback, to get guaranteed money fully guaranteed money in year 3 of an extension. That's just kind of the evolution of the league. When you look at the position that either Watt or Parsons would be in, they're both game-wrecking players. They're both Hall of Fame level players. You kind of have to give them what they're going to need to keep playing for you. So injuries aside, you just kind of say, look, it's football. Guys are going to get hurt. A lot of guys aren't going to get hurt. We just have to do the best that we can to keep them healthy. If you get hurt, well, it's bad luck. There's not really anything you can do about it. You can't. Mike Tomlin says this all the time. You can't prepare for injuries in the NFL. In a salary cap league that specializes in the NFL you can't pay a bunch of guys in case somebody else gets hurt. That's just the way it is. A back quarterback, you might make the argument against that. Clearly, Mike Tomlin doesn't think twice about that. But overall, you're going to pay them what their market value is. Injury history or otherwise, you just have to. You're far more likely to cut a guy in the middle of the contract than you are to not sign him because he might get hurt eventually.
Do you have to make the Steelers have been like we've talked about the Atlanta Hawks thing, like good enough to be there to get in the playoffs, not good enough to advance, so on and so forth. And now Steeler fans are grumbling. Do you have to make a statement to your fan base by making sure he's re-signed?
It's the only thing they can do at this point. With everything else that's going on among the Steelers right now, to see them actively not try to negotiate something with Watt long term, I understand there's only so much that you can do for the sake of your fans, but
sure,
you do have to do something for the sake of your fans. I don't think a nightmare scenario would be TJ Watt signing with the Cleveland Browns. Something like that would not sit well in any situation. So I'm convinced that they want to do that, but to drag it out, to get into that battle, to haggle over a couple $1 million or offsetting language in different points of the deal, I don't know if they can afford to do that in a season that they can't seem to find a quarterback that wants to play with them beyond Mason Rudolph, guy that they didn't want 2 years ago. I don't think they have a whole lot of leverage. I know that they're going to operate as if they do because clearly they're not going to act in another way. But we haven't seen an offseason this strange for the Steelers in a long time, and it's really showing the confidence and the faith from the market in the team has eroded quite a bit. This would make it even more. It would make it quite a bit worse if they show up to training camp and he's not doing it. Because at some point they're going to start calling him out for it, and they're going to look at the front office. They're not going to look at T.J. Watt.
Always a pleasure, and appreciate your great insight, my friend. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, Neal Coolong, half hour brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummels Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
May is going to be the month Sunbury Motors Ford saves you the most money for your summer vacation. We're bringing the heat with deals on the vehicles that'll take you wherever summer leads. Want to load up the family and hit the highway? Grab one of 32 2025 Ford Explorers and save up to $43.99 with prices starting under $40,000. Thinking about heading to the mountains or the trail this summer? Save up to $5,045 on 39 2024 Bronco Sports, starting at under $29,000. Or maybe you need something that works hard and plays even harder. Check out 16 2025 Ford Mavericks, delivering up to 40 miles per gallon. Wherever your summer takes you, Sunbury Motors Ford has the vehicle and the savings to get you there in style. Sunbury Motors Ford in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, online at sunburymotors.com. Getting families where they need to go every summer for 110 years.
Hi, it's Steve Jones reminding you about the 34th Annual Truman H. Purdy Memorial Golf Tournament to benefit the Greater Susquehanna Valley YMCA. Join me Wednesday, August 6th for a great day of golf at the Susquehanna Valley Country Club. There are tons of prizes on the course as well as team prizes for the four-person scramble. Call 570-286-5636 to register your team, and I'll see you on the course August 6th for the 34th Annual Truman H. Purdy Memorial Golf Tournament.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
And a half hour being brought to you by Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. All right. It is the unofficial start to summer. I know it will warm up. Hey, look, we're starting to get ready for the 4th of July. Start stocking up. What a party that's going to be. Number 249 for America. By the way, that actor who plays Clark is really good on that commercial. It's unbelievable. Imports Domestics Microbrews, the best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drinks, snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and out every day. 6 great flavors of slushies. And ready-to-drink cocktails. High Noon, Jack Daniels, Crown Royal, and the pickle bar led by the Barrels and the Dills, indeed second to none. I mean, just start stocking up for weekends. Then I get the U.S. Open coming up. Father's Day. Brewers Outlet gift cards for Father's Day. All Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. The guy who plays Clark in that commercial, what an actor.
It's going places.
Yeah. Something else. Yeah. The thing that strikes me about it is that he seems so natural in the role. All right. There we go. Oklahoma City last night. I watched this game last night. It was a really good game.
It's amazing how well they both shot with the way they were beating the heck out of each other.
I thought it was a good game to watch last night.
Yeah.
See, the NBA to me has had a lot of major issues. Remember we were talking about the college football playoff, how Tony Petitti's been pushing for 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5 for the Big Ten to determine it's 4, with 1 and 2 getting a bye. See, to me that I know Tony Petitti, and personally I like Tony. Just so everybody knows, I mean, all the times I've talked to him, I genuinely like him. I think he's a highly intelligent guy, and he understands the TV makeup of it. But to me, I'm not big on gimmicks, and this feels like a gimmick to me. Right? And take it from somebody who has referred to almost everything the NBA does is a gimmick. Let's do the play-in tournament. 7 to 10, 8 and 9. That's a gimmick. The in-season tournament, that's a gimmick. Ping pong balls to determine the first overall pick, that's a gimmick. I mean, they do a lot of gimmicks in the NBA. And another part of the gimmick to me is the fact that, they're so embedded with ESPN, which is perfectly fine. And ESPN does an excellent job of covering the NBA. Yet, they have the ability to make players out to be bigger than they truly are. Now, in this series, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, SGA, is a star that would play well in any era. I think Williams is this year's Jaylen Brown. Jalen Williams has played that way. He didn't have a great playoff last year. This year he's been terrific. Chet Holmgren is a legitimate star. May not be the number one player in his team, legitimate star. Anthony Edwards is a legitimate star. Halliburton's a legitimate star. Brunson's a legitimate star. But they're also the group I call faux stars. Karl Anthony Towns. Really? He's a star? He's a star because you tell me he is? I mean, I have two eyes. Yes, he had 20 points in the fourth quarter, which is a phenomenal quarter, and he was great in that quarter. But for the most part in his career, he's been a very good player and no better than a very good player. I mean, if I were to take Jalen Brunson and throw him up against Oscar Robertson, I think it'd be a pretty good, right? I mean, Brunson's not a great defender, so let's start with that. He's not. But offensively, you put him out there against Oscar Robertson, I'll tell you right now, that'd be one heck of a matchup to watch. I put Karl Anthony Towns out there against Wilt, Bill Russell, Nate Thurman, Bill Walton. I mean, you want a list? Willis Reed. He get chewed up by these people. He's not tough enough. He's not good enough, and he commits too many fouls that are just not smart. He doesn't play a smart game. Yet he is portrayed by the NBA and by ESPN as Cat. What do you think, Cat? He's a star. He's not a star. He's a really good player, but he's not a star.
I think part of that's the number one pick aura, too.
Well, is Ricochet a star?
Well, Ricochet's got to make the playoffs first.
He's got to do something.
Yes.
I mean,
man, that's the Knicks' biggest issue is those two are not very good defensive players. I was just reading how bad they are when they're both on the court in this series against the Pacers.
Because but Brunson makes up for it because Brunson is a fabulous scorer. Okay? Karl Anthony Towns is not. I mean, where's the spot? Now, I know we're talking about this coming off a 20 point fourth quarter, which eventually swung the game. Let's give Reggie Miller a lot of credit. You have to have a feel for the game when you're doing a broadcast. And if you're doing it right, you can feel the moment where things start to change. And he did. The end of the first half. Brunson has 3 fouls. He's on the bench. Pacers were up 20. Suddenly, at the end of the half, it's a 13-point game. He says, it feels different. And he was right. He was right. So let's give credit where credit is due for what he said. But there are too many guys in this league that they label as stars. And I don't get it. I literally don't get it. I mean, I could give you a long list of guys. I'm like going, it's not a star to me.
I think that's exactly why the Knicks and the Wolves made that trade.
Well, I mean, Randall is a good player.
Well, they're kind of the same player.
Yeah, they're kind of the same player. Yeah,
like skill-wise, not the same player, but I just mean, I think the Knicks got sick of him waiting to step up, and the Timberwolves got sick of waiting for Cat to take the next step. So let's see if they can make the next step on another team.
I think you're right about that. I think they both probably thought that a change of scenery would mean a lot. I mean, and look, we just talked about T.J. Watt. He's a legitimate star. Guy like Highsmith is really good, and he's a reason why you win games. He's on the opposite side, but he's really good. Right? And I think he's excellent at his position. But for whatever reason, the NBA promotes and ESPN helps them promote it. Guys are stars, and they aren't. I think Halliburton would have been a heck of a player in any era. I really like him a lot. I think SGA would be. I think Holmgren would be a handful for people. The way he plays the game, it's a little bit different. It's like Dave Cowens was a handful for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar when they played each other because the Cowens could step out and shoot. Well, Holmgren can do that, and it's like, I like that. I think there are some really good players. I think Mikal Bridges, he's a player you win with. He does all the little things. And I think OG Anunoby does a lot of the little things, too. I like him as a player as well. Neither one's a star. They're really good players and could play in any era because of how they play. But there are some guys that get promoted as stars in this league that would get eaten up in other eras. I mean, eaten up.
It is kind of funny how that Raptors championship team for 5 or 6 years ago is kind of spread around the league now.
Anunoby, Pascal Siakam. Siakam was a really good player in that team. Anunoby was a good player in that team. And guess what? They're both really good players still. Siakam goes out and he gives you a night where he's punched in the time card, put in his work, punched out the time card. I mean, he works. There's certain guys in this league that are stars. I mean, look, Jokic is a star, could play in any era. I think this Cade Cunningham kid from Detroit has shown me a lot. And then there are other guys. Ben Simmons? No, you got to be kidding me. Really?
I was going to say, he's a backup center now for the Clippers.
Yeah. I mean, John Morant has talent, but he's no star. Because he's got too many, he has too many problems that he's dealing with. Too many. I mean, and they keep promoting these guys over and over again. But this has always been the ESPN problem. I saw a headline, Ohtani hits leadoff home run for second straight day. Like, oh, that's impressive. Then you looked at it and went, oh, they lost. O'Neal Cruz, hardest hit ball in StatCast era. That's impressive. It is. I'm not saying it's not. Oh, by the way, the Pirates lost. Like, all these accomplishments keep being put out there. Like, it's monumental, unbelievable, absolutely incredible, and you keep looking at it and saying it doesn't lead to wins. Last I checked, it was a team sport. So, by the way, Penn State would have played the winner of Clemson-Notre Dame if it were 1 through 16. Or excuse me, 1 through 12 last year. Penn State would have played the Notre Dame Clemson winner in round 2. Notre Dame would have been 5. I just saw the chart.
I was going to say that would have been a tougher road
for both teams.
Yeah,
for both teams. And Penn State would have played the winner of Oregon, Indiana, Boise State. It's interesting. They would have played Notre Dame first, and then they could have ended up maybe playing Boise State next or a rematch with Oregon. Ohio State would have had to play Arizona State first, then Texas, and then would have played either SMU, Tennessee, or Georgia. Interesting. That's if they've done it 1 through 12 last year. So.
Wonder if Nico gets his money if Nico gets to that point against Ohio State.
No. Nope.
Well, I don't think they're beating Georgia anyway, so.
No, but he would not have gotten his money either. If he was threatening money before playing Ohio State, and what's the difference between threatening to do that before Ohio State and threatening to do it before the playoff?
Yeah.
I don't think that makes any difference. That's how I look at it. But you see what I'm saying about when it comes to there's so many, quote, faux stars out there that the NBA promotes. Yeah, the NHL doesn't do that. Yeah. Major League Baseball doesn't do it. I mean, they kind of let Aaron Judge and Ohtani and they kind of speak for themselves.
That's two sports whose national ratings aren't as good as the NBA's either.
Yeah, the NBA ratings are okay. By the way, speaking of ratings, let's give credit where credit's due. The Indianapolis 500 on Fox was the highest rated Indianapolis 500 in 17 years.
I'd love to know why. Just because it didn't seem like there was anything different this year.
Especially the beginning. The beginning was such a mess.
Yeah.
Now, you can't help the rain. The rain you can't help. But every time you turn around, there's a crash. And every time you turn in, I mean, they couldn't even get off the pace lap and they got a crash. Right? Now, when you get to the final 50 laps of the race, that was pretty good racing. I mean, there weren't any incidents. I mean, it was like the last 50 laps of that race, so the last quarter of it, I mean, you had some racing going on there, and that's where obviously it peaked with the number of people watching. But it's the highest rated Indianapolis 500 in 17 years.
That was my immediate thought when I watched it. I mean, it wasn't like there was a compelling storyline. There wasn't like it wasn't like there was something they talked about for the last 3 weeks that would have gotten people more interested than normal. Good for them. I mean,
I agree with you.
I mean, if you can figure that out, that's perfect.
I can't figure it out. I can't figure it out. Now, the NBA ratings have been doing pretty well. The NBA playoffs on ESPN, averaging 4.9 million viewers. By the way, the Indianapolis 500 was between 7 and 8 million. But it's averaging 4.9 million, second most watched playoff since 2011. So, I mean, that's good. I mean, their NBA viewership is up 12% over last year. Now, TNT should be doing fine because they've got the Knicks, which helps.
I wasn't really thinking about this, but this is the last series that's going to be on
ever
Turner Networks.
Yep, gone. The Timberwolves Thunder Game 2 had a 2.7 rating, 5.16 million viewers. Okay. Ratings declined 14% and viewership dropped 18% from last year's Mavericks Timberwolves Game 2. See, that's not doing as well. By the way, if you're wondering about Oklahoma City facing an Eastern team in the finals, if they were to win, they were 29-1 against the East.
I'm not sure which team I want to come out of the East if it is the Thunder, because I think both would be entertaining. I'd like to see that the Pacers offense against the Thunder defense, to be honest.
Well, the fact is, look, the Pacers play a full court game. And that's why what surprised me about Karl Anthony Towns getting 20 in the fourth quarter is that win against the trend, not about Towns, nothing about that, right? It went against the trend of how Indiana's played fourth quarters, because Indiana, which is pedal to the floor at both ends of the floor, they tend to run you out of gas. They ran Cleveland out of gas, and they've been running the Knicks out of gas until the game at home the other day.
Thibodeau finally played his bench.
Yes, he did. In fact, he made a change in the starting lineup.
Well, yeah, Hart went to the bench and Mitchell Robinson started, I believe.
Yeah, yep. So we'll see tonight. It's a game that this is one tonight that it would be recommended to both teams to win, right? Because the Knicks can't fall behind 3-1, and I don't think the Pacers can afford to go back to Madison Square Garden 2-2.
No, they cannot.
What a profound statement by me.
Listening to News Radio